Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Erin Urban, and today we'll be talking about how to boost your confidence and charisma with Katherine Johns, who will share with us how to gain the ability to make that first strong impression, more influence, and persuade people while spreading your unique and authentic ideas. So, like I said before, I'm your host, Erin Urban. I'm a certified executive leadership coach who partners with high achieving leaders and teams to unlock their potential to elevate their impact and influence. And when it comes to influence, we all know first impressions matter. Yet, even the smartest, most talented people in the world have trouble saying the right words the right way to make the right impact. And I will share with you, in all honesty, it's a struggle for me as well from time to time, even though this is what I do, is talking about how to elevate influence and impact. When it comes to talking about myself, it's not always as straightforward as you might think. You can see it easily in other people, but sometimes we struggle to see and articulate that value for ourselves. So I know that you want to elevate your impact. So come on in, say hi, say where you're from. Don't be shy. Ask your questions so we can help you align your voice and message with your brand to get the buy-in you need when it matters most. Now, today, our special guest is a professional speaker and coach. Katherine Johns has a wealth of experiential knowledge partnering with professionals, founders, and leaders just like you to get their message heard and find their true voice from her rewarding broadcasting background and career. Now, she's the author of Show Up and Shine, Simple Steps to Boost Your Confidence and Charisma. Now, which offers leaders and readers, easy for me to say, a roadmap to enhance their professional presence and change the way they're perceived and get the results you want. I would love to bring into the show, so join me in a big round of applause and welcome to Katherine. It's great to see you.
I am delighted to be here, Erin.
Wonderful. Now, as you can see, it's not always easy, even if you've practiced this over and over, and I've done, I don't know how many hundreds of live shows at this point. We oftentimes don't necessarily get all of our words strung together cohesively. Now, when that happens, do we freeze or do we smile through it?
We smile through it and keep going.
Right.
And we know that, in the grand scheme of things, a little slip of the tongue or a mispronunciation or a pause where it didn't belong is really not a very big deal. What people want from us is the kind of natural conversation you've already started here, as opposed to reading a script, which we might do perfectly, but it wouldn't be as engaging or as interesting.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I have people come up to me after speaking events, for example, and they say, well, how are you just so engaged and excited and have so much fun up there? It's like, well, I don't give a rip. That's why I will fumble and stumble occasionally and just have fun with it because let's face it, life isn't perfect. And I think if we were to try to project a perfect appearance or persona, you won't relate to the people you want to get your message across to.
It rarely works trying to be perfect.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit more, Katherine, if you don't mind. What inspires you to do what you do today, which is helping people find their true authentic voice and share their message when it matters most?
Well, I would like to say it was all very high minded, but in fact, what happened was I got laid off again, which, probably at this point, most people can relate to. I had a very long career, as you mentioned, in radio. And when my last radio gig caved in, I was kind of, now what? Right?
Yeah.
I've done that for 25 years. I don't know how to do anything else. And so it took me a little bit of time. There's actually an interesting process that I can talk about later on about trying to find what is the right thing for me.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I worked with a coach, and it
Mhm,
was my first experience with a career coach, I guess you
mhm.
could call her. And it was very valuable because one of the things she had me look at was what I do well, of course. I mean, what are my
Right.
skills? What are my talents? And what does the world need? And
Mm,
so there was that piece. And then how do I put those together? right?
Right.
Like, what do I have to offer that somebody might want? And then there was one other component, which was about what will the world pay for? Because there are plenty of things the world needs, but is not interested in investing in those
It's
things.
absolutely,
Right?
absolutely.
So, and so that's kind of how I narrowed down going into some kind of coaching around communication, because that's what I'd studied my whole life and that's what I'd lived, and if I had expertise, that was going to be where I'd find it. So I started all over, relaunched, and went to work for a consulting firm doing presentation skills training.
And now you do this for yourself.
Now I do this for myself, and
Mhm.
I also do much more speaking. Ironically, when I first started coaching people who spoke, I didn't do a ton of speaking on my own.
Hmm.
And the truth is, I was not entirely comfortable with speaking.
But
So
you
going
had been
back,
speaking for so many years. What was the
yes, but
difference?
I had been speaking, so it would be like this, right? You hear me, but you don't see me. And I loved that. And I was
Ah,
very comfortable
mhm.
with that.
Okay.
And coming out from behind the microphone, to be there with actual people looking back at me was actually a little bit of intimidating.
Yeah. Sure.
And I had certainly gotten feedback over the years, because if there's anything that draws out the meanness, it would be a talk radio show. Um, I had gotten feedback about my appearance. Let's just say that feedback was not overwhelmingly positive. And I was really uncomfortable about
Mhm.
showing up in front of people where they could look at me. And who knows what they would think. And so, one of the things I talk about now with my clients is getting over that. Because
Right.
as long as I'm feeling that kind of reluctance,
Mm,
it's hard for me to really connect with an audience. I
right.
need to be willing to show up fully, completely, with my hair as it is, and my body shape as it is, and my wardrobe as it is, and my voice as it is,
Mhm.
and be willing to be seen.
Right. All right, absolutely. That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I want to say hi to Mariama tuning in from Virginia. Great to see you. And
Love it.
Amy earlier, she said, great, I'm going to watch the replay. So if this is you and you are watching the replay, just know that your comments will be seen by us. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Don't be shy. Tune in and say hi, say where you're from, and we will be notified, because what you shared, Catherine, is a really big deal.
It is, and it's really practical. Can I tell you one more story before I launch into the practical?
Oh, sure, yeah.
When I was fairly new in Chicago radio, I
Mhm.
came here to work on a morning show with a big Midwestern radio name, Larry Lujak. For people in the Midwest, they'll remember him. And I did the news on his show along with a co-anchor, and it was very much Larry is the star, and then these news people come in every half hour and say the news and go away.
Mhm.
And I'd been there maybe 6 months, maybe a year at the most, when they called us in and said, "We want Larry to interface with the news people." Now, Larry was not a sociable kind of guy. He was a great DJ,
Right.
but he didn't really want to socialize or interface with anybody. And they kind of forced the issue. It was
Right.
very interesting, because that was really the beginning of what is now the standard morning show, right? It's always an ensemble. There's a
Absolutely.
traffic bimbo, and there's a news chick, and there's a sports geek, and everybody's got this character that they play.
Mhm.
We're all familiar with that. Well, that was brand new then, and it was surprisingly successful. I mean, we turned out to be a really good ensemble, and the show started to take off. So I got a call to be on AM Chicago, a television show, to talk about this new phenomenon of girls on the radio.
Oh
Because
my god.
honest to God, it was an era, and it was 1980, right?
Right.
And
Yeah, that's definitely the time. Oh my gosh, girls on the radio?
yeah,
What?
there's a reason they refer to morning men, because they are. And then they were just bringing in women to be a side
Mhm.
chick, right? So
Mhm.
they're doing a show about this new phenomenon, and I panicked because there would be a camera involved, right?
Mhm.
And I actually ducked it. My boss put the kibosh on it in the end because their show started before ours ended. So I would have had to leave the studio and not do the
Right.
last newscast.
Mhm.
And having no marketing sense and news purism, he said, "No, you can't do that." And I was so relieved, Erin,
Right.
because I didn't want to be on that show. And this is how I blew my opportunity to be on what was soon to be renamed as the Oprah Winfrey Show. Yeah, because I
Ooh,
was afraid,
wow. Wow.
because I didn't want to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say to people who maybe being seen isn't their go-to? It's not
Yeah,
something that comes naturally,
yeah.
right? Or even just sharing their voice. What would you say to them?
I would say that if you don't want to be overlooked, you got to be willing to be seen.
That's
It's just
fantastic.
that
Right.
simple,
Yeah.
right? If you want to be successful in your career or even in your life, right?
Hmm.
You need to be seen. People need to know who you are and they need to have a perception of you. And I think it's really easy for women, especially, to get hung up on, the shape of my face or the shape of my body or some mean thing that somebody said to me in fifth grade about
I
my
know,
body,
right, right.
right? I mean,
How many of you out there listening right now, how do you relate to this? Right. When I was young, I got told because I was different, I was taller than all the other kids. They're like,
see,
"Oh, you're stupid. You'll never amount to anything." And guess what? I'm still having to work through this and let go of those burdens that I'm carrying that don't serve me,
yeah,
right?
I think working through it is exactly right. And some of it is just learning to shrug it off. Maybe that comes partly with age. Um, for sure, self acceptance is a part of it.
Yes.
This is the face I have. God, I wish it were different, but here it is.
I
And
think it's a lovely
I think,
face.
well, thank you. I liked it better about 20 years ago, to tell you the truth. The point is, for each of us, this is the face we have. And I know there's a temptation now for young women, especially, to, have a little work done or sometimes a lot of work.
Mm.
I have, well, there's a famous story about Botox gone bad that I can share later. But the gist is, I think when we accept this is the face, this is the body, this is the voice I have, and
Mhm.
I am sharing it with you
And
to
this is the
serve.
wasp that I have in my studio at the moment.
Oh, lovely. Thank you for sharing the
So if
wasp.
you see someone buzzing around in the background, it's the guest wasp. He has decided that my studio is the best place to be. So he's buzzing around.
Now, does
Just
that make you nervous having a wasp in your studio? Oh, good.
not at
I think
all.
I don't think I'd like it much. I'm glad it's in your studio and not mine.
Yeah, no, it doesn't bother me at all. This particular home was built in 1875. I haven't not yet figured out where they're squeezing their wasp bodies through, but I will find it. And then I will stop the hole.
I love it. This is a part of showing up as who we are.
Mhm.
We bring our wasp with us. And you and I talked a little bit before the show started. This might actually be helpful for people about the fake backgrounds that virtual
Right.
platforms provide. I am not a fan because when I am on Zoom with a client or doing a workshop or with you now, I I want to show up as in my natural habitat, right?
Right.
Busy speaker at work in her office. This is my office. And I think the fake background is unnecessary, and most of them aren't that great.
Mhm.
If you have a really good camera, it might work well, but a lot of times you see that fuzziness around people's heads.
Mhm.
A lot of people prefer a blurred background.
That's okay. If you have not the luxury perhaps of having your own office and you're maybe sitting at the kitchen table
Yeah,
and you want
but
to
you
make
know
a good
what?
first impression.
Erin, turn on the news. There are people all over network newscasts doing live appearances from their
Hmm.
kitchens. the kitchen is the trendiest place to be now. It
I
has
buy
to
all the
probably be a
time.
little neater than mine, but seriously, I I think there's something about it's the same thing about being willing to be seen, right?
Right.
And and I had a conversation with a client who is a big muckety muck sales manager type guy about the blurred background. And
Mhm.
I said, I would rather see you in your office, at your kitchen table, in the den, I don't wherever it is,
Mhm.
but to see you as you are where you are. And he
Mhm.
poo-pooed the whole thing. He was really committed to the blurred background. And then he was in a meeting with the CEO who said, I don't like those blurred backgrounds. What are you hiding back there? And
Right.
surprise,
Mhm.
right? The CEO had more clout than I did. But the point is, I think it's distracting in a way to people because they start speculating about that.
What is back there? What's going on? What are they hiding? So it's
Yes.
it's it's subconscious. It's
Yeah.
our limbic brain going looking for threats, and if you're not being totally transparent with what's going on around you in your little box on the camera, then let's open for speculation. I want to also say hi to Tio tuning in this morning from Katy, Texas. It's great to see you again, Tio.
This whole thing about showing up and being, I hate this word, authentic, is it's all of a piece, right? It's the
Mhm.
blurred background, it's how we look and feel, it's how we dress, it's how we speak. And I am convinced that the path to real charisma is being who you really are,
Mhm.
and not putting on a false front
Right.
or trying to project an image, but actually being yourself.
You're absolutely on point. When I was a very young professional, I was convinced that one should don the mask. And what's interesting when you do that, it doesn't usually work out in your favor,
Right. Right.
typically, because we cannot holistically be someone we are not. So we're not bringing our whole self into the moment. If we're not
Yeah.
being our authentic self, or whatever you want to call it, we're not being our real, true, what's coming from us, and being comfortable in our own skin, that opens the door to a lot of challenges and things showing up that you don't want to show up. Like people perceiving you a way that may not be in alignment with your brand, which was my case. I was seen as the steamroller was my nickname. Let's put that.
And that's not in alignment with your brand, Erin.
It was not in alignment with how I wanted to be portrayed
Yeah.
at all, and it certainly did not help me achieve the leadership position that I wanted. Yet, after I had a rude awakening to this, oh gosh, this brand that apparently was I was portraying, and shifted just some small things. It wasn't like I reinvented who I was overnight. No, clearly not. However, I dropped the mask. I was okay with being myself, and people liked me a whole lot more. They could relate to me
Yeah.
finally, instead of me having this wall, because when you have a mask, you're hiding behind a wall.
It's a fact. And my experience is similar. And I found that when the mask is gone, some people liked me more and then some people liked me less. And that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is very challenging. And maybe, again, particularly for women, or maybe men experience it the same way. And some guy can post a comment and tell us. But I think there's a real need to be liked by the most people.
Mm-hmm.
And to it's hard to be polarizing. And yet, the way to be successful is not to try to be all things to all people.
That's
It's
also
not
true.
to appeal to everybody.
That's right.
I need to really appeal to the people who are right for me
Mm-hmm.
or for whom I am right, and let go of a need to be
Be all
everything
things to
for,
all people.
yeah, yeah. And I
Absolutely.
think that's a hard lesson to learn, and maybe particularly so for those of us who are building businesses on our own, because
Mhm.
it's easy to get sucked into, I just need clients. I don't care who they are or where they are or how, I just need more of them. And in the end, I think that diluting our message to make it appeal to everybody, or diluting our
You lose everyone.
persona, yeah, it does. Yeah, it just
You
doesn't work.
Yeah. Same thing for those people seeking maybe career advancement or leadership position. Um, Take, for example, early leaders, coaching an emerging leader, someone who's new to a leadership position or official title, if you will. I'd have to argue to say we're all leaders at some level, but an official title.
That's probably true.
This individual oftentimes will come back to me with a version of, well, I feel like I need to be popular or liked or be acceptable by this broad array of individuals. And we have a really healthy conversation around the fact that no, you won't be liked by everyone. And that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. Because when you break it down fundamentally, scientifically, if you will, there are different diverse work styles. And some work styles inherently are at polar opposites from one another. How they communicate, how they infer information, how they listen, how they think, how they behave are very different in a way that's almost abrasive to the other work style.
Yeah.
So if you are true to yourself, there are some people you probably won't necessarily get along with naturally. And there's ways to adjust your conversation with those people that you know might be a little difficult, so you aren't necessarily at cross purposes all the time.
You might be familiar with Sally Hogshead and her fascination advantage. I studied her program and got certified
Mhm.
last fall so that I could incorporate it in my coaching with speakers. The fascination advantage is all about being fascinating, as you might
Mhm.
guess. And the way to be fascinating is exactly what you're talking about, what we're talking about here. It's not to try to appeal to everybody, it's
Mhm.
to be crystal clear about the way you fascinate. And the premise is all of us are fascinating in some way, but we do tend to dull our edges or dilute
Mhm.
our superpower in
Mhm.
an effort to fit in and appeal to more people and draw more and get promoted, all of that stuff, right?
Mhm.
So when you really get clear on your particular fascination advantages, we call them, then you double down on that. And Sally says, I think she's so right about this, different is better than better.
Hmm.
Like we all try to be better than the competition, better than other people in our industry or in our department or in our business. Well, you can only be so good. And no matter how good you are, even if you were the very best, which is kind of hard to picture, there's somebody coming up right behind you who could be better yet. So instead of trying to be better than everybody, what I need to do is be different from everybody.
That's fantastic. I like that.
My fascination advantage is maverick leader. So, though that incorporates innovation and power. And I objected when I first did the test. I was like, really hooey. I don't innovate anything. I never invented anything. I don't know it. And the way we use innovation is it's kind of about mm, marching to the beat of a different drummer, doing things a little bit differently, not being bound by expectations, having a new idea. So I came up with that sort of what we call an anthem that goes with that. And it's about being irreverent. Like when I
Oh, I
drilled
like
down into who I am, irreverent impact is what I bring to
Mhm.
situations. And somebody in my coaching program said, in the Fascinate program said, I don't know about that because I'm not sure people want an irreverent coach.
Why
And I
not?
said, it's true. And those people would be not my clients because there are other people for whom irreverence or a slightly skewed view
Mhm.
is very attractive and helpful. And so that's the advantage of really understanding what we bring to our interactions with
Right.
colleagues and clients and how it differs from how other people do it, which is perfectly fine. It's not a criticism. It's just to be clear that we are the particular people we are. And when we serve the people who are meant for us and for whom
Mhm.
we are meant,
Right.
magic happens.
You're so spot on about that.
Mm.
What I've learned so far from what you shared is very insightful and inspirational is number one, drop the mask, be yourself, get to know who you are. Because I would have to share with you a
Yeah.
lot of people have worn that mask for so long, they're not even sure who they are, even
I think
how
that's
to
true.
be who they are at their core. So, whatever that looks like for you, start investigating that true self and how that might be expressed. What are your gifts? What are your talents? What is that unique part of you? And it's probably not just one thing, it's probably a combination of things. And how does it
Sure.
show up in your life and in your professional career? And no, you don't have to be just like everybody else. And heaven forbid you try to be the best. I walked that path, didn't work out so
Did
well.
you?
I might have. All I got was I was a real jerk to work with. That's what
Oh,
happened.
great.
So that being the best wasn't necessarily the most fantastic idea, and it spurred a lot of jealousy too. So let's keep that in
Yeah.
mind. Those people who are very attached to being the expert at all things,
Yeah.
well, yes, and there's nothing wrong having great expertise. However, perhaps relax a little bit and understand how you are just unique and awesome and in your own right. And are you comfortable with bringing that
Yeah.
to the moment, if you will?
And that actually leads us nicely into some conversation about confidence, which we
Hmm.
promised to talk about. So I would like to say a little bit about the path to confidence, which is not psyching yourself up, talking yourself into something.
Fake it till you make it.
Well, it actually might be a little about that. I think the whole thing is physical.
Mm,
So I think that I cannot think my way to more confidence. I cannot emote my way to more confidence. But if I
mm,
ground myself, put my feet flat on the floor and my seat in the chair and sit
mhm,
up straight
mhm,
and really feel the energy of the earth fill my body. And y'all can do this with me if you like and just try it. Make sure your feet are on the floor and really sense that like the energy comes up and it fills your legs and
mhm.
moves up into your spine. And you notice that you straighten your spine and your
Yep.
shoulders
Your
kind of
shoulders
drop
come back.
back
Mhm.
and down, and your head is straight up and down on top of your shoulders, and your arms are not folded together. You're not clasping or clenching or pulling in, but you're very expansive. You're open across here. You're breathing all the way down to your belly, and your voice can come up and out in a way that it can't
Mhm.
if you're hunched or
That's
constricted.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
With voice coaching, I've learned that to have room for the diaphragm to expand, that allows you to
Yes.
project. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even if I don't need to speak loudly, I need to project an energy. So I'm
Mhm.
speaking to a microphone that's inches from my mouth. I don't need volume, but I need energy because without it, it's very flat coming out of your speaker. So we need that energy that comes from the breath.
Mhm.
And I need to bring that to every interaction
Mhm.
with other people, well, certainly with clients, with an audience, but even if it's just one person, I need that powerful energy.
Yeah.
And when I begin to generate it, I am more confident.
Mhm.
I don't have to talk myself into anything. I just start to feel it.
I'd love to hear from those of you either tuning in now or later how you feel after you did that exercise. I know I felt much different. And
Don't you?
I'm very active. So I'm bouncing around in my
Yeah.
chair. I've got my hands like this. I got up and sometimes I'll put my toes up. I'm very active. However, when I really centered and grounded, it helped me truly focus
Yeah.
on what you had to say and then
Yeah.
also show up in the space much more powerfully.
It makes such a difference. And
Yes, it really
when
does.
we moved everything onto virtual platforms, a lot of people found they needed to reorient because they were
Mhm.
used to being in a conference room or speaking in front of an audience or even being in an office around a small table talking to two or three people. It's very different when everything comes through the screen. So here's my big tip for virtual meetings. All the same thing applies that I just said about being grounded, being centered, coming back to this base position. And then, of course, I move. I lean in, I lean to the side, I move my hands.
Mhm.
But I come back to this centered, grounded
Awareness.
spot,
Yeah. Mhm.
very aligned.
Yep.
Yeah. And as I move and return here, sometimes you get on a meeting with somebody, maybe you've had this experience, Erin, where they have plenty of energy. In fact, it feels like a little too much, like they're coming through the screen at you because they get louder and louder and closer, faster and faster. And so that does generate energy, but it's a little bit of an energy that makes people back away. So the way I think about it is especially when I'm working a virtual platform, I want to be a fireplace, not a furnace.
I like that.
So the energy is magnetic, right? It's a warmth that pulls people in, as opposed to forced air that it's like this.
Right. I think sometimes when we see that energetic, it could be excitement, which is a part of it.
For sure.
And it could also be a need to, it comes from, I don't feel heard.
Yes.
Right. Oftentimes it comes from, I don't feel heard. Let me energize. Let me get in the camera. Let me jump up and down. Let me do all this thing. Now, sometimes I'll do that because I'm really excited. And sometimes it comes from, if someone doesn't feel heard, they need to make sure that they're overly projecting themselves in a way that's almost confrontational to the other people.
So a better way to be heard, I mean, I think you're exactly right about that. It's easy to get caught up in needing to make my point or needing to be noticed and get a little over energized. Quiet is actually more magnetic than noise. The best way I know to get attention is stop talking. Because when I pause, I might imagine that people go away, but no, typically when you pause, people lean in. They're ready for the next thing. The pause. So think about it like this. When we're speaking, a pause is like the white space on a page when we're reading. If it didn't have white space between the words and sentences and phrases, it would be gibberish. We wouldn't understand any of it.
Right.
We need the white space to make sense of the content. We put a mat around a picture on the wall. What does the mat do? It's white space that separates the picture from all the stuff around it in the room. It draws our eye to the picture, and the pause draws our ear to what we're saying, and is much more effective than saying, "Hey, listen to me."
unless I'm talking to my husband.
Well, yeah, that's another whole story.
Hey, I'm talking. Huh? I love my husband. He's sweet. But you know what I'm talking about here.
I do. I have a husband too.
This is great. This is wonderful information. I really appreciate what you shared with us so far. When it comes to, say, crafting your unique message, we talked a little bit about understanding like who you are, and then how that shows up, and then how you can make sure they're setting the space for you to show up. But then what do you say? Because I hear that a lot. What do I say?
I actually do a program often for networking groups about how to have a magnetic message. Make your message more magnetic. And here's how I suggest doing it. It's a little different from what most people do, and it works like a charm. So instead of starting off with, I'm Catherine Johns, I'm a speaker and a coach, and I'm certified, and I've been in business for 17 years, and I have a 7-week program, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about any of that. Certainly not when they just met me. And so I think a better way is to start, instead of talking about me, to start by talking about you. And so my elevator speech, so to speak, begins with the people I serve, not me. And then what is the pickle those people are in? So I want to be really clear about their need. And then what would the promised land look like? If they didn't have that pickle, what would that be like for them? And then after I've established all that, which doesn't have to take a whole long time, it can be a couple of 3 sentences, then finally I get to talk about me. So here's how I solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last part is maybe to add a little bit of proof. So here's what that might sound like. You know how you go to a networking event, and we're actually able now to go to some in person. Hallelujah. You go to a networking event, you stand up, you're supposed to talk about your business, but you don't know what to say. You feel awkward. You feel your face get red. Maybe you kind of get choked. It feels horrible. But imagine that you could just stand up and smoothly describe the work you do and make it so appealing that people can't wait to talk to you. Well, that's what I help people do with my program, Magnetic Introductions, how to have them at hello. And, I had somebody recently tell me that her whole business changed when she stopped
Wow.
doing that old stale elevator
Right,
speech
right,
and
yeah.
started telling a quick story that drew people in.
So what, can you give us an example? Because I'd love to
That
hear
was
that.
my example. I
Oh,
just did it.
that was so smooth. It did not sound like an
Well,
elevator pitch.
see, that's the point.
You got me, Catherine. I love it. That's fantastic. I thought
And
you were just telling a story.
I run into resistance because people are really in the habit of my name, my title.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, people just meeting us don't care about our name and title. It
No,
goes
even mine. I mean, here I am. I've condensed it down to one liner because I'm all about efficiency. And I partner with high achieving leaders and teams to unlock their potential to elevate impact and influence.
Okay. Can I play with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So say it again.
I partner with high achieving leaders and teams to unlock their potential to elevate impact and influence.
All right. Who are these high achieving teams? I mean, like, is there an industry or is there a...
There really isn't, no.
Okay, so it's cross industry. That's good.
It's industry agnostic, yeah.
And what makes them high performing? Why do you, like, how would I know my team qualifies?
They're driven. They care about their results.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's the pickle they're in?
They're not getting the results.
They're not getting the results. Okay. So they are committed to results, but they're not getting results.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we just started with that, you know how it is, you put together a team and they're talented people and they're clearly knowledgeable about the industry and they should be succeeding. And yet there seems to be something holding them back and they're not getting the results that they'd like and that you'd like for them. Does that fairly sum up the pickle they're in?
Can I just tape that and have
you certainly
do
can.
my intro?
All right. Now, what would it look like if they were getting the results? What would that be like?
Like they'd be more productive. They'd have less conflict. They have less misunderstandings. And
so when you say productive, does that mean they're making more money or they're
increased income, revenue, right?
Okay. So imagine that your team could be increasing revenue and doing it without the kind of conflicts that can emerge in, well, all kinds of people who work together. That's what I help teams do. So what we just did was say a little bit about the people, say a little bit about what problem they're facing, say a little bit about how would it look like if that problem was solved, like, offer some relief. And then finally, we get to say something about Erin. So this is where you talk about.
So it's totally not the 30-second elevator pitch. You have to say what you're going to say in, I don't know, 10 words or less. All this. It's much more engaging. I really like this. Yeah. I really do.
It works really well. And you can, you can do it really quickly and you can expand it. It's probably hard to do it in 10 seconds, but you can do a sentence about each piece. Who are the people? What's the pickle they're in? What would the promised land look like if they solve that problem? What would happen for them? What's your path? And you don't need to say much about your path. Nobody wants to hear about how many sessions it is or how much it costs or
about
like
that. And
too
also how many
premature for that.
certifications you have. I'm a certified leadership psychology.
Oh
I've
yeah, they don't care about any of that.
yeah, not
No,
as much.
they're
When it
no
comes
what
to
they're looking
contract, maybe.
for. Yeah, what they're look at some point they might, right? When they're ready to sign an agreement with you, maybe they do want to know that stuff. But I think one of the challenges for people who network their way to more business, whether that means informal conversations or literally going to a
Mhm.
chamber of commerce meeting or a professional association meeting and standing up and doing the 30 seconds, it, one of the challenges is that people we tell people too much. We want to go into the whole song and dance about everything we do and why it's so great, and people aren't ready for it yet.
Mhm.
I used to facilitate a networking meeting for Chamber of Commerce. One time, this was really fun. We started out and I said, how many of us came here this morning and really, in our heart of hearts, if we're honest, we came here today hoping to sell something. And of course, everybody said,
Everybody raises
yeah,
their hand.
why
Yeah, yeah.
would I be here if I didn't want? Then I said, okay, now, how many of us came here this morning, poured a cup of coffee, and really thought in my heart of hearts, I am dying to buy something this morning?
Nobody.
Nobody. It's not, we can't sell because nobody's buying, right? It's not what those networking situations are for. And so we do ourselves and our potential clients a disservice when we jump right in with a sales message
Right.
that doesn't hit the mark and keeps us from getting to something where we could build up to that.
Absolutely.
Make sense?
That makes total sense.
All
And I want to
right,
be able to
cool.
connect this too with those people who are, working for corporate. It's very similar. It's the exact same process. And oftentimes what we'll do is we'll
Yeah.
say, oh, I'm a project management professional. I'm also Prozeki certified and I'm working on my agile certification.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it that is your unique talent? What pain do you solve? What type of industry, like that sort of thing. So if you were to say, let's say I'm going to play the part of that project management professional
Okay. Oh, great.
who just, was PMP certified and also Prozeki and working on our agile.
And I'm supposed to help you figure out something to say? Is that what you're
Yeah.
telling me? I don't even know what all of that stuff means. Prozeki, really? So I would ask her the same questions I asked you. Who are the people you serve?
Oh, I
And
work in healthcare.
okay, what about healthcare? Is it people on the front lines in a hospital? Is it administrators? Who hires you?
Well, the people who hire me, what I do is I come in and I help the IT side of it, so the administrative
Okay.
side, and I
All right.
specify with ERP implementations that helps people do their
Okay.
work easier and faster,
All
theoretically.
right. Okay. So in any healthcare setting, the people may not see the IT that goes on,
Mm-hmm.
but it's running the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
And everything from patient care to billing to administration suffers when the technology doesn't run right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the technology is right and the right people are in the right positions, we have a smooth running operation and it's seamless. And people don't see it happening, and that's actually what you want. So I help organizations get to that, where all their IT processes are working in the background as they should be, and nothing fails. Now I'm losing my track, but you get the idea, right?
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I love that. That's fantastic. So very different than the
I'm a
value
PMP.
proposition that we've been taught
Yeah,
to
yeah,
deliver.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of doing
We
myself.
all are,
Yeah.
because we learned it, right? And we took it for granted that that's what works. And maybe there are settings where it does work. What I know is most of my clients do much better at connecting with the people they want to serve, whether that means
Mhm.
clients or corporate colleagues. They do much better with connecting when they speak like a human being and not like they're spewing some canned routine.
Right. Right. You are so on point with that. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was
It is my
fantastic.
pleasure.
Yeah, and before we wrap up the show, is there anything you'd like to share with us? Anything else? Golden nuggets, tips, ahas?
Another aha. Well, I guess I would circle back to what I said earlier about being willing to be seen
Mhm.
and and being willing to show up in front of your clients, your customers, your colleagues, and be you. And it can feel a little scary. Erin and I talked about that some. It can feel like you're at risk. It is the path to greater success, but also to greater satisfaction. Because in the end, it doesn't really feel good to be trying to hide who I am. And the more comfortable you can be in your own skin, the more comfortable people will be with you and the more they'll want to do business with you.
That's fantastic. And that's a wonderful note to wrap up our show
All
today. Thank
right.
you so much, Catherine. And thank you to all of you who have tuned in to the live show and those of you watching the replay later. Just know that you can reach out to us anytime. Connect with Catherine online. I shared a link in the comments on LinkedIn. I'll do so on the other social platforms as well to her book, Show Up and Shine. Definitely something you'd want to check out. So until next time, my friends, keep elevating.